Hi everyone, today we did get an interesting day. You can see we gapped up, retraced here, kind of filled the gap, rallied a little bit more, and then sold off pretty aggressively here into the mid-session, end of session. You can see we're continuing to kind of drift a little bit lower there, end of session. So let's take a quick look at all of the charts as we head into the weekend. Just a quick recap here, but this doesn't look as good today as it has over the last couple days. Do me a quick favor and like and subscribe and watch the video till the end to help out the channel, and let's get started. In news today, we got David Solomon coming out and warning people that the next stock drawdown will be significant and that people will not feel good about it, which honestly tells me that markets are probably going to continue to go higher, at least a little bit. If you got people, these headliners coming out and saying that markets could come down, that means not everything is super euphoric quite yet. But that's what he's saying here. He says there will be a drawdown and it will likely come in the next 2 years. So not a good timetable really to trade off of, but that's what he's saying. Markets run in cycles. Historically, they've had significant accelerations due to technology. I think we've kind of seen that on the back of AI. We've been talking about that on the channel for a long time. But he says here he wouldn't be surprised if in the next 12 to 24 months we see a significant drawdown with regards to equity markets. They say there's a lot of capital being deployed and that capital will not deliver returns and people are not going to feel good about it. He says there's a lot of buzz around AI and that has certainly driven markets up for sure. But he thinks that this is generating a bit of a bubble and that bubble will burst. But he also wants to highlight here he does not know what the path will be. But at some point there will be a reset and there will be a drawdown. So just keep that in the back of your mind. I think we're probably still okay for the medium term, but let's take a look at the charts. I think there's a little bit of short-term risk. Moving over to fear and greed, this really did not move all week here. You can see basically flat, 53 to a 54. Flattened out here on momentum, still neutral, no movement, strength, breadth, really no movement across the board. We did see put call ratio fall pretty aggressively yesterday, getting back down into that extreme greed area. Volatility continues to kind of turn up here. Safe haven demand turning up obviously with markets, and then extreme fear on junk bonds. This spiked up yesterday. We said it was probably going to spike down today, and sure enough it did. Moving over to the economic calendar, pretty good across the board here, except for non-manufacturing PMI. Everything else was above expectations and above that 50 line in here, above the 50 line here for non-manufacturing prices. Don't love that one as much, but services PMI, good. Non-manufacturing employment, better than expectations. So overall, not terrible. Moving over to the charts here, you can see we ended up unchanged on the day, down 1 penny on the daily chart. Tried to go higher, outside reversal day, ended up selling back down to the lows from the previous day. Momentum stepping to bearish. RSI overbought. We're kind of at the top of this trading range here, and that just signals to me that we're probably going to pull back at least a little bit. 9 EMA sitting there, 664.55. I think we'll probably pull back to that. Doesn't mean we're not going to go higher over the longer term. I just think we're a little extended here. We've been extended, but continue to grind up to this range here. Makes sense. And now we're starting to pull back here. You can also see how that kind of lower low structure. Previously, we had been rallying with the low, with that kind of low, higher low structure in here, higher low structure in here, rallied up, and really it was higher low structures all week, but now you have a little bit of a breakdown here, and I think that's probably going to continue to sell just a little bit Monday. That's what I'm going to be looking for. So overall, looks a little bit more bearish today. Again, I don't think the structure is going to change over the next week or 2 to 3 weeks, but I think at least part of next week we'll see a little bit of a retracement, something like this, and that's what I'll be looking for. Moving over to the Tasty charts here, you can see still between the 8 and that upper band. 8 EMA at 665.92, 21 EMA down there at that next level, 660.19. We did hit that 21 last time before we ended up rallying up. I think we could potentially go to that. That would give you a little bit over a percent of selling. I think we'll probably see that at some point next week. And then I suspect that this will just generally continue here, but got to this peak level last time, sold off, got to a peak level again. I think we'll probably see just a little bit of a sell. And then looking at that hourly chart here, pushed through, bullish conditions, hit the upper ATR band, sold off, hit that lowest band here on the 12 o'clock candle, and then kind of chopped sideways, starting to sell just a little bit more. It is still bullish conditions, but I still believe this is going to pull back a little bit more, kind of into that 664 to 666 area, somewhere in here. It'll sell into that area, and then we'll see what happens. Moving over to the NASDAQ, not as good here on the NASDAQ, down 0.42 on the day, sold off pretty decently from that high, closing lower. Momentum back to bearish, RSI back to bearish, selling off from that overbought condition. You can see that sell here, low, lower, low structure. You would expect a lower high. Again, I think 600 is probably in play. similar to that 9 EMA at 599.50, somewhere in there between that and 600. Makes sense for me, at least into this area for the Monday. Does it cut through there and kind of start to change structure? That is what you have to wonder. And then that trend structure in here all the way down at 592, that's what we hit last time in this sell. And then we got the rally out. Does it come back to that area and then rally out again? All things to consider, but structurally, I think this is a low, lower low, and you would look for at least a little bit of a sell Monday, Tuesday. Moving over to the NASDAQ, same thesis really as the SPY charts on the Tasty charts. Hit the upper band, pulled back, hit that 8 EMA almost at 650 cents. Low of day was 601.38, so just missed it. Probably going to overthrow it. Still bullish conditions, trailing stop down at 586.15. Either way, though, very little volume on this rally. I think we'll probably see just a little bit more sell here pretty soon, and then we'll see what happens after that. But it is still a higher high on that kind of medium time frame. But in the short time frames, like I said, does look a little bit more bearish. And then as I suspected, that did put us into bearish conditions with that sell. So we were bearish conditions yesterday, could not overthrow that high, sold off here, got extended below that lowest ATR band, hesitated at that level, and you can see we're drifting a little bit lower at the end of the after hours session. Moving over to the Russell and the Dow, you can see the Russell did exactly what we thought that it was going to do. Hit that 244, actually ended up gapping through it, and then went to that next trend line. That was the price target up around that 247.50 area, overthrew that level. I tried to buy it on the breakout, bought it with a covered call, so I didn't actually end up losing too much money when it started to sell off. It started to hesitate in here. I took it off pretty early, so I actually managed to still make money in there, but you can see big wick rejection at the trend. Last time we hit that wick rejection, we sold off more. So is that going to be a major point of resistance again? I do suspect that it will, and you can see after hours we're drifting lower. 244.46 is going to be the level. 9 EMA down at 242.50, so we'll see, does this sell off more? Again, still technically a higher high, so you could see more structure in here and we start to push, but either way, clear resistance at this level. We'll see what happens. And then looking at the Dow, Dow was pretty strong most of the session, up quite a lot, up over 0.5%. It was up 1% at one point. New all-time high close, new all-time high wicks, of course. The Dow was really, really good. Tons of volume there. Look at that volume on the Dow. I suspect this will probably continue as one of the strongest on the session, and structurally it looks very strong as well. Looking at the Mag 7, talked about the Mag 7 not being great structurally, and yesterday it was not great, and then we got the continuation lower here today. Momentum bearish, RSI bearish. This was a major indicator for me that we were probably going to sell a little bit, and that we'll probably continue to sell a little bit into next week, and part of why I took off my Qs position. We'll look at that later, but took off the Qs position, did not put on a new Qs position because Mag 7's looking a little bit weak here. We're at the 21. Holding support kind of. Based on this, I would think that we're probably going to sell at least another 3% or so, closer to that 55 EMA. Moving over to Apple and Microsoft. Apple continues to be really, really strong. Trend line still very strong. Tested it again, closed higher. Everything looks good there. Still looking for a 260 touch. Microsoft looked not so great yesterday. Looks a little better today, but really just sideways choppy here over the last 4 days. Right at these consolidation highs, it's not really ripping here, so I would say this is probably done. I think we'll probably pull back to that support to around 506. Moving over to Tesla and NVIDIA, these sold off a lot as well, 1.4% to 0.67%. I ended up taking off the NVIDIA position, and I kind of regret it. We ended up bouncing a little bit more here. Structurally, this is still good. I thought we were going to kind of continue down with markets, but it held up really, really well on the closing basis, and I'll look for this again on the Monday. Probably should have held it. A little frustrated there, but Tesla sold off big yesterday, got the continuation, no surprises. 414.50 is your target, didn't quite touch that. Caught a little bit of a bounce from that area. Momentum bearish, RSI bearish, big volume. I would suspect that this is going to continue to go bearish. Moving over to staples and discretionary. Staples still holding in there really, really well. This looks like a solid base at this point, likely to continue to go higher from here. Don't know if it'll have a ton of movement, maybe 3 to 4%. Not too bad of a trade there on staple potential. And then looking at discretionaries, this looks like a pretty clear topping pattern now with a high double top. Bigger sells, momentum bearish, RSI bearish. This looks like some clear risk off play, right? So 2 big days of selling on discretionaries, staples hanging in there, positive on the day. Moving over to breadth. Interesting change here on breadth. You can see the big gap up, same as equities, but then gave it all back almost on 20-day. Still finished positive, but below the open. Interesting. And then 50-day went right to that next area, 62.25. Again, finishing positive, momentum still bullish here. Breadth says markets could still go bullish, so something to keep in mind. While the structure still looks not so great, the underneath the hood price action on breadth still looks bullish. Moving over to the dollar. Dollar sold off today. Really not much to say about it. It's in the middle of this range that it's been in for a little bit. Didn't go lower than yesterday's low, but you do have kind of a high, lower, high structure here now. It's in the middle of this nonsense. I still believe that this is a longer term base and that this will turn up at some point, but it's sure taking its sweet time to do so. Moving over to bonds, J&K continues to sell. This is more risk off play, similar to what we're seeing on staples versus discretionaries, momentum bearish, RSI bearish. TLT basically unchanged, still at support. Moving over to the VIX. The VIX continues to elevate here, just continues to step up ever so slightly, throwing a wick to a higher high, staying positive on the candle, still holding this base in here. The VIX still showing us that something weird is going on. Not sure what the timing on that is going to be, but something weird is definitely happening. Moving over to my accounts, I did lose a little bit of money with NVIDIA closing a little bit lower. I also lost a little bit, and that was really all of the losses. I made money on all of the short puts, and then I put on that covered call like I talked about with the IWM. Lost just a little bit of money there. That was okay. You can see still managed to make money on the Roth. But I think we're going to see a little bit lower prices on the Monday. I think I'll be able to get in at a little bit cheaper price. I'll be watching the normal levels, watching the dynamic supports and static supports that I had written here, but I still think we'll see a little bit cheaper prices Monday, maybe even into Tuesday. If we get a 3-day sell, that would be interesting. That would give you some Wednesday opportunities. That's what we got last time, so that's what I'm looking for. A little bit of sells. Not enough for me to go short, but enough for me to wait for cheaper prices. Let me know down in the comments section what you thought of the prediction. Are we going to see lower prices over the next 12 to 24 months? I think that's a pretty wide net to cast. I think it's probably going to happen. But what does that mean for your trading right now? It's a little bit hard to say. Let me know what you think. Otherwise, like and subscribe if you got any value out of this video. Make sure you hit the bell so you don't miss out on any future episodes. Of course, none of this is financial advice. This is all for entertainment purposes. Good luck in your trading and have a great day.